Have you ever noticed that even though you're surrounded by people all the time, you can still feel a little alone? Do you struggle to build deep, meaningful relationships, even though you know that connection is important? In a world that constantly pulls you in different directions, how do you create relationships that actually fulfill you? Welcome to Change Made Easy. Changing your habits, routines, and behaviors is hard. We make it easy. I'm Paul Levitin, and I help high achievers who feel stuck bridge the gap between where they are and where they want to be. Traditional self-help doesn't work. It's either too rigid, too generic, or too overwhelming. My approach is different. I simplify change by making it so easy it can't not happen. Using my easier framework, I'll help you create habits, build routines, and behaviors that stick so you can stop struggling and start thriving. It's that easy. In today's episode, we're asking, how can you create real, lasting connections in a world that often feels disconnected? If you've ever felt like you're drifting through life without a strong support system, if you sometimes wonder why some relationships feel fulfilling and others drain you, or if you're just tired of service-level connections that don't really go anywhere, this episode is for you. Because real connection isn't just a luxury. It's essential for your happiness, success, and even your health. To help us uncover this truth about connection, I'm joined by Patricia Blathory, an expert on human relationships and the author of the new book, Connected. Patricia combines her background in business and psychology to break down how the right relationships can transform your life and why too many of us settle for shallow, unfulfilling connections. In this episode, we discuss why you might feel disconnected even when you're surrounded by people, how different types of relationships, from friendships to family bonds, shape your well-being, and why the quality of your connections matter more than how many people you know. If you've ever felt like you're the only one struggling to maintain deep relationships, Patricia will show you why that's not true and what you can do about it. She also shares how personal connection directly impacts your health and your career, why social media might be keeping you isolated, and how to recognize when a relationship is actually holding you back. Plus, she reveals 3 simple but powerful skills you can start using today to deepen your relationships instantly. So if you're ready to stop feeling disconnected and start building the kinds of relationships that truly support you, you're in luck. And please enjoy this conversation with Patricia Blathory. How is connection important to us as individuals?
I think we're relational beings. So connection is a fundamental need that we have. If you look at the Maslow's pyramid, connection and belonging is in there. So we're relational. We need it to thrive. We need it to succeed. We need to pretty much achieve anything we want in life.
Yeah, I totally agree. And that brings an interesting kind of disconnect where we are relational beings, humans. We were pack animals up until a certain point, and now have pivoted or reached a tipping point to where we are in a society that is about individualism. And it's a lot of pull yourself up by your bootstraps and what have I done versus what have you done. So how do we balance those two when so much of what we are told to aspire to has to do with us more than the grand total sum of everyone?
Yeah, you're right. I think the culture and the values we are definitely there's been a pivot, especially in Western society, towards a more individualistic worldview. And not that I don't think that is a good thing. There's a place where your individual needs need to be above the needs of the group. So sometimes that is important because otherwise, if you don't prioritize yourself at all, then you end up living a life that is in dependent on everybody else. However, if that is not well balanced, we end up being so individualistic that we fall into what Vivek Murthy, he wrote a book called The Epidemic of Loneliness. And that's what it is, because we have become so self-sufficient. But then I want to make a comment. It's not that we're self-sufficient. We have the fallacy of thinking that we're self-sufficient. And that's where we fall into all these difficulties the mental health issues, the loneliness, the suicide numbers are so much bigger now than they were before. And I think that's what it's happening.
You mentioned the fallacy that we feel like individuals, but that's often not so much the case. I wonder about, as you were doing research for your book, Connected, if you found any interesting examples of that and ways that we can see, because it feels like I am an individual. So where does the fallacy come in?
The fallacy of thinking, I think it's a fallacy of thinking that we don't need others. So the book, the big thing with the book, and I guess that the big research out there is that it shows that people that are better connected, so people that are in close relationships, and here it's not necessarily marriage. Sometimes you have a good friend, you might have a partner or a big group of friends. Statistically and empirically, those people live longer and healthier lives. And that's where that fallacy of, well, I'm an individual, I'm alone, that's where it comes from. It doesn't mean we're not able to figure things out on our own. I'm not questioning the individual's ability to get things done on your own. That's absolutely not the question. You can. You can live on your own and be happy, for sure. You can be a lone wolf at work and accomplish things and go up the echelon in your company. You can be the CEO and not need anybody. I'm not questioning that. What I am saying is that empirically and statistically, imagine how much further you would go and how much more success you would have if you had a village, if you had people in your life, how much healthier you would be. Oh, but I'm happier alone. Yes, there's some people that are happier alone, but when you have nobody, then who's there for you when you do need to go to the doctors or when you are sick? Because we all get sick. There are needs that we have as humans that really are only nurtured by other people.
So I'm right on board with you. The connection is important, and having that is a key piece of the human experience. So I'm curious if in your research or just what you understand about this, is there a difference between the types of connections? You mentioned it doesn't have to be marriage. So is it the type of connection or also the amounts? Is it more breadth or depth? Like what are the actual specifics of what we should be looking to grow?
So it doesn't, so the research that I've done, so I did research on siblings. How important is it to get along with your siblings? On marital, how important it is to have a spouse or a group of friends. And when you compare them, the only common denominator here is that you need to have your people. It doesn't matter who your people are. So some people, some individuals have a very strong sense of belonging in their family of origin. So you get along with your parents really well. You get along with your siblings like they are your people. You feel like it's a different lifetimes and you've been friends from different lifetimes. And in this life, you came back as siblings. So some people have the sense of belonging in their family of origin that is so strong that that's where they find themselves. And those are the relationships that are making them thrive. And that feeds that relational need. Some people, it's about finding their partner. Oh, it's the love of my life. It's the other shoe. And you have all those analogies and metaphors. And that's where they find this sense of belonging. They have children and together they make this one big happy family that they've built. So maybe they don't have the sense of belonging in their family of origin as the one they do in their family, their built family, the one they constructed. And then you have another set of individuals where they find a sense of belonging in their friends. So it's a group of friends that they travel together and they're great friends that they grew up together and they marry and unmarry and they have second marriages or third marriages. Sometimes they don't get along with their kids and whatever. But that friendship is so solid and the relationship is so strong that fills that sense of belonging.
Hey, 1 second before we continue. If you're enjoying this episode, if you're learning something from this show, if you're catching yourself saying, man, this is so helpful, this Paul guy is pretty smart. First of all, thank you. But secondly, if that is you, you might have asked, how can I work with Paul? Can he help me create the change I've been looking for? And if you have, you're in luck. Because after 12 years as a coach, both in person and online, for the first time ever, I'm opening up my calendar specifically to talk to you, my podcast listener. Use the link in the show notes to book a completely free coaching session. If you need help with nutrition, fitness, motivation, mindset, basically anything that goes into building your happy, healthy life, then I want to talk to you. Click the link in the show notes and let's chat. I created this podcast to help, and now I want to go deeper. This is the first time I've ever offered anything like this, and I don't know how long it'll last or how long I'll be able to keep doing it, so take advantage while you can. All right, now let's get back to the show.
So when you ask me, is it the type of relationship? So yes, in the sense that it's the depth, and it's a relationship that you can bring your authentic self to it. It's one that is filled with love and authenticity and truth, and where you really can show up as the version of you that you're most comfortable with. And I'm just going to open a parenthesis here. I have a friend who once said to me, I love who I am when I'm with you. And I love that, because if you can find any relationship with your partner, family of origin, your friends, whatever it is, if you have any relationship where you love who you are when you're with them, that's the kind of relationship that improves your health, that gets you to live longer. Even your salary is higher when you're well connected. That's what research finds. So long answer to your question. Does it matter what type or amount? No, as long as it's the kind of friendship where you show up being the best version of you, the one that you like the best.
Yeah, that's great. And what you said there at the end, I like who the person I am when I'm with you, seems that would be just the guiding light that we want to follow. You want to be closer to those people. But I could also flip that and inversely see that if I don't like the person that I become when I'm with someone, that would send a message that maybe I'm not with the right person, either romantically, platonically, even in business. So how do you find or advise people about breaking up or pruning those connections when they aren't serving them?
Paul, I'm standing up clapping here, because that's exactly what you said is so true. And there is a part in the book where I say that, where sometimes some relationships bring out the worst in you. And I actually had one of these relationships. I was part of a group where there was this one specific person. They brought out the worst in me. I was petty. I had some snarky comments that I'm like, I can't believe I just said that. And that I would say stuff that I'm like, I don't even believe that. I just said that to hurt them. And those are the relationships that you really need to consider. Why am I behaving this way? Is it the way they trigger me? Is it because they're triggering me in a way that I cannot regulate? And for sure, I think breaking up or breaking off those relationships is the last step. The first step is, okay, so I'm behaving in a way that I don't like. So I'll use my example because it's very vivid in my memory. I'm showing up in a way that I don't like. I am not the person that I want to be. I don't speak that way. I don't believe in those things. And I definitely don't have that tone. Why am I doing this? So my first step was, what is it about this dynamic that I'm contributing? What is it about this? And then I'm like, okay, maybe I need to regulate better. So there was a lady, she triggered me. And then I'm like, why is she triggering me? Why is it that she bothers me so much? And why is it that, and then most importantly, why is it that I'm not regulating? Why is it that I'm losing my cool when she says those things or when she behaves that way? Because really, if you can control yourself, then it's all good. But I struggled and I struggled and I struggled. And I'm like, there's something about her that just brings out the worst in me. And then I came to the conclusion that I realized when is that she wanted me to conform to thinking the way she did. And for me, freedom of thought and the ability to think differently are very important values. And it really bothers me when people want you to always conform to a certain way of behaving or thinking. So this is what triggered me about her. And really, it was something I'm like, well, I don't really respect that point of view. And then I'm like, you know what? Maybe I'm better off away from this relationship. And sure enough, I didn't have the conversation because the minute I realized what it was these fundamental different values. Then I just kind of distanced myself. And now it's like, hey, how's it going? We meet. We actually occasionally meet because it's a big group of people, but we're not as close as we used to be. I don't have to see them that often because, again, sometimes you're just not compatible. And that's something to be respected. But you are dead on when you show up in relationships, not in a way that you recognize yourself, then for sure it's something you need to question.
I really love that you said your first step wasn't to just pull away or just to get angry or upset, but it was to turn the light back on yourself and say, how am I contributing to this dynamic? Something I talk about often on the show is maintaining a sense of agency. And so often we think that as soon as something bad happens, it's like, well, it was them. They did this, they did that, they're an ass, they blah 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 blah. And it's like all very well may be true. Some people are assholes and like that happens. And yet when we take the time to look at ourselves as the potential problem maker, we can also be the problem solver. Now, obviously, in that situation, that wasn't the case. You're like, no, like this person is impeding on my values, and like that's not someone I want to be involved with. But I love that first step wasn't immediately to start attacking and to sow divisiveness, divisiveness, and that you kind of looked at yourself first. I wonder though, when you talk about connections, like you said, like we know that we're better with more connections, with deeper connections, whether it's familial, friends, work connections. We are better health, better mental health, we make more money, all of that stuff. How does technology play into this, social media and these newer connections that aren't face-to-face connections like you and I connecting right now over the magic of the internet?
I actually have a post. I had an internet post, a social media post on the love and hate relationship I have with my phone. Because if you were to ask me what is the number one thing I fight with my kids about, it's about the phone. That I'm like, okay, you cannot be here in this beautiful party and be checking out what other people are doing on the phone. Because then you're not here. You're there, you're here, you're actually nowhere. You're like in this la la land. So I fight about that so much. I'm like, we need to be present where we are. So when we're having this conversation, first thing I did was put my phone on airplane mode because I don't want a notification. I don't want to know if somebody's like hearting a picture of or loving a comment that I made. Zero interest. I need to be here focused so I can really be present in this conversation. I spend a lot of hours. I'm actually quite good about this, but it's because I don't think it has a hook on me. I spend actually a few hours a day without my phone. Half the time I don't know where it is. And then, of course, I'll sit and I'll attend to it for a half an hour, responding and answering and being present there. So I do hate it because it robs a lot of people, or the people I'm with a lot of times, from being fully with me because it pulls them. However, I love it because my brother went on a trip to Africa and they were helping with some surgeries there. And then they went on a safari. And I've never been to Africa. I've never been to a safari. I've never been to like a hospital in Angola where they were helping volunteering with these surgeries. And every day I got pictures of my nephew and my niece helping out with these instruments and all this stuff and them working at a hospital. And it was so cool. How can you not love that? How can you say that's a bad thing? The animals, like they were seeing the animals, getting pictures of the animals. So having dinner together, my husband, he travels a lot for work. So sometimes the kids will be having dinner and then we'll turn on FaceTime and we're eating, but he's there with us eating. So we're having a family dinner despite him not being there. So it's hard to navigate that. It's really about having the discipline to use it when it's going to add to your relationships and to your connection, but not let it have that other effect, which is to actually take you away from the present.
That is one of the biggest challenges in my life as well. I have the same relationship with my phone. It's love, hate, lots of hate, but also, I mean, I can't, you can't deny that, like I said before, magic of being so connected. But my question is about those connections, say social media, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram. How do you think of those as connections compared to the connections that we make in real life? Are the friends that I make and have online enough to sustain me? If I am a gamer and I game with the guys that I game with every night, and we talk and we really joke and we have friends. I mean, we're friends, but we've never met in person. Is that a real connection, or is there something missing when everything is happening over a virtual connection?
So you give me something big there, and I want just some clarification. Are we talking about, because if I'm going to go talking to social media friendships where we are connected and you're commenting on my pictures, and if we're talking about that, there's a lot of research being done right now and a lot of conclusive studies coming out saying that that is, not only is it not the same, but it's actually much worse because you have a curated life online and that is not real. Okay. So Instagram, it's almost like it should be banned because it does so much harm to mental health of young adults, of even big adults, but young adults. Like I have a friend who said, it seems like everybody's in Courchevel skiing in January. And I'm like, that's your feed because you're looking at that stuff. Like, and then you feel like the only one who's too poor to afford to be in Courchevel for the winter. And so that is bad when I'm talking about those connections. And she's liking the picture saying, oh my God, it looks like so much fun. Whereas really what she's feeling is, I feel like the poor friend who didn't get to make it there, the loser who doesn't make enough to go. That's her feeling, but really what she's posting is it's great. So that, I think it's bad. And really I'm going binary, and usually I very rarely go binary yes or no. I'm usually very in the gray, but it's a fact, conclusive, research showing it. That's just not good. But then you brought me the idea of playing with your friends when you're playing video games. Now, playing video game by yourself at home and playing video games with your friends online. So I'd say there's like a ladder here. By yourself, like it used to be Mario Brothers. I'm back in the 1900s. I was born in the 1900s. So playing Mario Brothers by myself, that was a very lonely activity. Now, today, the kids play with the earphones and they're playing it with their friends and they can hear their friends. Oh, you loser. Oh, you're so lame. Oh, you're so stupid. Oh, no, go here, go right, go left, or whatever. That is like a notch up from what I did. Like with mine was just me by myself and Mario, and we're not having a conversation. Here, there's like some hackling, you're having a good time, you're like teasing each other. Whether you know them or not, it's already a step up from Mario by yourself. But really, if you want to say, what's the best, what's the gold standard? The gold standard, Paul, is always going to be in-person relationships. Nothing beats that. Nothing beats that because we are relational beings, right? With AI and like Eve coming out with like these marriages to these robots, we want people. We need nuance. Oh, human beings are full of drama and it's just so difficult to understand men. It's so difficult to understand women. You know what? You don't want a bot. You don't want somebody who's, yes, no, I'll please you all the time. I'll do this. No, the nuance is what makes this dance so formidable, like so just, and we don't know what's going to come your way. Like one day is this, one day is the other. That's the beauty of life, right? And so that's my answer. I don't know if you agree or what you think, but I really believe in that.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I do think, again, everything is, I'm the same way as you. I try to very rarely say things are one way or the other. Nothing is black or white. I do think Instagram is net negative, and yet it still has hugely powerful positive aspects to it of connecting people and things like that. But yes, in terms of, I would agree on the video gaming thing. I'm not a gamer, but I have friends who are, and like they literally have friends who they've been friends with for 10 years and they've never met, but they get together every Thursday night and they play online, and then they know about each other's kids and marriages and when they get fired from a job. So it's, I think, a cool way to be connected because some people might not have that opportunity to meet with all those people in real life. So I think that aspect of it is very interesting. But I'm wondering if when you think about connections, you also think about connections to a certain thing or a phase of life. And what I'm asking is, I know that you have transitioned careers after 15 years or more in a single career to then shift out of that to go to school for an entire new field and basically start from scratch. So I'm wondering if when you do something like that, how do you disconnect from the person that you were before? And so much of your identity is tied up in being the person who did X, Y, and Z, and now I'm leaving all that behind. How do you make that decision to shift gears like that?
Yeah. I think the only tweak I would do is that you don't disconnect. You don't leave it behind because they're all layers that are on top of each other. So the Patricia that went to a business school, like I have a master's in business, I'm an entrepreneur. I actually literally did not leave my business. I still run it on the side. So I haven't, but even if I had, let's say I was an executive in a big company, even had I left it to switch into being a psychologist, you don't leave it behind. Everything that I learned in that career, everything that I experienced in that career, it makes me who I am. It's part of who I am. So then today, as a psychotherapist, psychologist, psychotherapist, if you ask me, Patricia, do you niche? Yes. What do you niche on? Leaders, entrepreneurs, people in leadership positions. And why do you think that is? It's because the layers under my psychotherapy practice are full of entrepreneurial experiences and what I lived, what did I do, and all this knowledge that I have, and all this. I'm so relatable. So when they speak about this, I know exactly what it is. I'm worried that my business is going to fail. I'm like, been there. Oh, we had a great year. Surprisingly, I don't know why. I'm like, been there. So we don't leave things behind. And even relationships, even one thing I talk about, sometimes people get divorced and they're like, oh my God, I'm going to have to start anew. No, you don't start anew. You're a different person because of what you experienced in that relationship or in that career or in that company. So that's the only tweak I would do because the connection never, you might not have the connection with that person, but what you experienced and what you learned remain.
I think that's a very powerful reframe. I appreciate you offering that because that makes all of the difference. So often people break up, get divorced, whatever, end a relationship and talk about the time that they wasted or the time that they lost. And it's just like that's not how this is. You don't lose time, you don't waste time. You could still you had 4 or 5 years together. That was great. Just because the last 6 months was full of arguing, that doesn't negate all of the happiness and everything like that. So I think, and again, with no matter what area of life you're thinking about, you can always take the lessons from one area to the other. So something I've heard you say in the past is we can't change the things that happen to us, but we can change the way we experience them. Can you expand on that a little bit?
I love that. And that is the promise and the potential of psychotherapy because life is, life is. You have a disability, that's a fact. Your husband left you, that's a fact. Your kid died, that's a fact. Life is. The way we relate to these things, that is what can be changed. I think it's the Stoics, the Stoicism, the philosophy, they say that like nothing has a meaning. Basically, the meaning is what we attribute to these facts. So what I do in psychotherapy is, come on in, let's talk about this, and let's see what kind of a meaning, what kind of a narrative are you bringing with that very hard thing that you're going through? What's your narrative? What meaning are you attributing to it? And what I do is I try to sell you perspective and hope. So if you ask, well, what is it that you do for a living? I'm like, I sell you perspective and hope. Because if I can take a very difficult situation and try to talk about it and help you maybe see it from a different perspective, or let's break this down. This big problem, it's actually many different things and make you see it in a different light, then the way you relate to that problem, then all of a sudden it's like, okay, it has a size now. I can tackle it. Because if it's too big and you can't see it, it becomes overwhelming and all encompassing and engulfs you. So that sentence that you said, it is so dear to me. And when you were saying it, I actually got goosebumps because I do think it's so powerful and it's beautiful.
I love that breakdown. Life is such a powerful sentence, such a powerful sentiment. I talk about the same thing a lot with my clients on this show. Things are the way that they are. And to me, all discomfort and discontent comes from what I call arguing with reality, where you want things to be different than the way that they are. And again, that's Stoicism, that's Buddhism. This is ancient philosophies that have
Wisdom.
said the same thing.
And they know stuff, right?
Right. Yeah, they might know a thing or two.
They know what they're doing.
Right.
I love it.
And yet, in those moments, that doesn't make it any easier. So, could you give some of the tangible tips? How do you start to peel this back and, like you said, break it down into sizable chunks for people when they come in and it's so big you can't see around the whole thing to even start to think about what's going on?
Again, that's the miracle and the power of therapy, of talk therapy. Because if it's you by yourself in a room with a problem, good luck with that. You're not going to win. Like, it's just that simple. I'm going to figure things out. Give me a minute. I'm like, good luck with that. You give me a call in a couple of days. But when you have somebody, and there's actually a picture that sometimes I show to my clients because one of my clients gave it to me as a gift. And then I show it to other people, which is you come in with this ball of yarn with all these different colors. And what you do when you come to therapy is you kind of start pulling the different color threads and making these very organized colored balls. So basically you take the problems and you start seeing them for what they are. That's what we call unpack. And it's interesting because if you don't go to therapy, if you haven't experienced the therapeutic journey, you're like, what does that mean even? Like, what do you mean go to therapy and talk about it? How is talking about it going to make it better? Because talking about your problems or about things that are with a trained ear allows you to organize your thoughts. And I think that's the best way I would describe a therapy session is you just organize your thoughts. And this whole unpacking is nothing more than allowing yourself to speak through it. And every time you tell me what is going on, you find a different nuance to the problem. You find a different, because you become further and further and more detached, and you look at it with more objectivity. And that is, talking about the problem allows you to look at things more objectively and less with your limbic system and all that subjectivity and all these emotions, which is really what mars your ability to make decisions and to attribute a more reasonable meaning to things.
Great explanation and breakdown there. And it's interesting, as you're talking, first thing you said was, if you're sitting in a room alone trying to figure this out, good luck. And instantly, I'm taken back to the beginning of our conversation where we were talking about connection being so powerful. And when we try to do everything alone, rarely does it work. And there's a power in connection. And I am all here for therapy. I completely endorse it. And I think that it's extremely powerful for most people, maybe everyone. But how much of it is the trained ear, and how much of it is simply having another person to talk to when so often we are trying to do everything alone?
You know what? I'll go to your side on this. You don't necessarily need a therapist. I'm with you. I'll tell you a funny story. Before I started therapy, so I didn't go to therapy until I was mid to late 30s. So until then, I have a very, very good and solid group of friends. And the people who I have, who I love who I am when I show up with them, because I don't need to put up a facade. I'm vulnerable. I'm the one who doesn't know anything. I can ask stupid questions and I can tell them how much I'm struggling with all the different realms in my life. And that's how I show up. And usually they give me good perspective. And I have a couple of friends, and one of which I'll tell you, she's so good that once I was having issues in my marriage, and she's like, the problem is you. because you do this and you do this and you do this. And of course, when you do this, he does that. So this is the kind of great feedback you can have with another human who's not even a therapist. Now, I had then a little bit of a bigger problem in my relationship, and it was a little bit of a tougher pill to swallow. We lost our ability to communicate. And I talked to her about this problem, and I talked to her about this problem. And eventually, this friend comes to me and she says, you know what? I think you should go to a therapist. I think it reached a point where just this chatting with me is not really solving it for you. This is not doing it for you. Go to the therapist. And I did. And that is, I think, when the trained ear, when the chosen interventions, when the very well put questions come into play. So I don't disagree with you that a really good friend with really good conversations does the same work as a therapist. There's just that sometimes people don't have those relationships. So this is one potential problem. And a lot of times I'm like, you got to find people in your life who you have these kind of conversations with. But the second time, sometimes even the best of friends with the best of ears and the best of understanding, they'll get to a point where they can't help you.
100% totally agree. Again, I'm not
But you made a
harping.
great, you know
Yeah.
what? But you made a great point.
Yeah.
Like relationships will take you halfway. It's
Yeah.
almost like a therapist. Yeah.
Right. It's the way I look at it. I was a personal trainer for a long time. And people will say, like, well, why is personal training necessary? Like, can't I just work out with my friend, or can't I just go on YouTube? It's like, yeah, you can. A lot of people, that's good enough. But there are some people who just need a little bit more help, or there's some times when you need a little bit more help, or there's some things that are a little bit more serious, like you have an injury or you're training for a sport or something like that. And it's like there's levels. You used the analogy of a ladder before, right? So there's different levels to everything. It's not to say that therapy wouldn't help anyone, but so is just having those friendships. And like you said, though, having that as an option where not everyone has those friends. Some people live in rural places. Some people don't have the family connections that you spoke about earlier. So I think that everything is just a tool in the toolbox, but I'm always wanting people to understand that a tool is only as good as you know how to use it, right? As they say, when everything is a hammer, all you have is nails or something like that.
And I want to make just one more comment about that too. There's also an assumption in what you say that people know how to have these deep relationships and these deep conversations. And I will tell you that what I find a lot of times people come to therapy to learn how to have these deeper conversations where they have lots of friends, but their conversations kind of remain at a little bit of a higher level where the conversation is like, hi, Paul, how are you? It was great. How was work? It was great. You don't get into, why does that matter? Why is this relevant? Oh, is your dad sick? Yes, my dad's sick. He's in the hospital. Is he okay? Yep, he's good. He made it out of the hospital. No big deal. That's a surface level conversation. A little bit of a deeper level is, yeah, he was in the hospital and I was really scared. But it's good. He's good. He's back home, good to go and all that stuff. That's a little bit of a deeper level. And then all of a sudden, here's a deeper, even deeper. And this is, I think, the level we're looking at to have these really meaningful conversations. And it might go something like this. Dad's in the hospital and he made this procedure and I was a little bit scared. So level 2, a little bit scared. But I'll tell you, this actually really shook me up. I didn't sleep for a week after that because I had never, the thought of losing my dad never crossed my mind. And I never realized how much I was going to miss him. And I think now that he's back home, it just gave me this feeling of gratitude, this feeling of realizing how important he is to my life. Do you see how all of a sudden it's not about the dad and about the impact of this event in my life, in the meaning, and this is what I mean. A lot of people, they don't know how to have these conversations. And these are the connections. And this is the level of conversation that substitute a therapist. If you only have friends that talk at the higher level, you need a therapist.
Yeah, I'm very glad that you brought that up and went down that road because exactly as you said, all of this stuff is a skill. People, if you think of therapy as just talking, that's a very low level understanding of what is actually happening. It's guiding the conversation in such a way to allow the person to get to level 3 because the conversation starts at level 1. Similar, I mean, people who listen to this podcast know a lot of times I'll ask questions of my guests or things like that. And they're like, oh, wow, good question. Or, oh, like, I'm so glad you asked this. Like, There's a reason for that. There's a skill of communication. There's a skill of guiding a conversation that I learned through coaching that I now bring to podcasting. But therapy is very much the same. It takes a specific skill set to be able to get down from level 1 to level 2 to level 3, especially because we innately put up guards around those things. So yes, you
Yes.
could have those friendships where you get to level 3, but that would actually be, I would think, even harder because our friends, we have a different dynamic where we have a level of ego and we have a certain persona that we put up. Where a therapist, you go to therapy thinking, all right, I'm going to have these deep conversations. This person doesn't know me, I don't know them, but we're going to get into the grit and the grime and the muck. So I appreciate you kind of offering that discrepancy or that distinction, because
Yeah.
while it would be cool to have all of the friends who have these deep, meaningful conversations all the time, I think that most people listening, myself included, would realize that that's probably not how I talk to my friends most of the time. Most of my friends, it's that like,
Exactly.
yeah, things are cool. How are things with you? And obviously, it would be great to get things to go a little bit deeper. But until then, and in the meantime, and on the side of that, having a skilled professional, a therapist, a coach, whatever you want to call it, is extremely impactful. But thinking about this stuff as a skill, what are the 3 skills that you teach for having relationships?
I'm going to start with the one that we talked for having relationships. So can I just like tweak that question? What are the 3 skills that I suggest to improve the quality of your relationships? Would that be okay?
Perfect, perfect.
Because to have relationships, and again, relationships, there's many steps to relationships. Like you can just the approach, and then you have a relationship. But we're talking here about level 3 relationships. So what I would say is as a continuation of last question is ask what the meaning of whatever you just told me is. My dad's in the hospital. Oh my God, is he okay? Yeah, he's fine. He's out of the hospital. It's all good. How are you feeling about it? Oh, I'm fine, good. And then maybe offer, oh yeah, like I sometimes when our parents start getting sick at this age, we start worrying about their mortality. Give them a nibble, kind of like, this is where I'm going with this. They might take it, they might not. So deepening those conversations, making an effort to deepen the conversation. I'll give you 2 more. One is a posture of curiosity. So when you talk, try to really understand what the person is saying, not just what they say, but how come they say it that way, or why do they think of it that way? Like when you were first talking, I'm like, that's pretty insightful. And then you're like, oh, and I've been a coach and I've been a personal trainer. I'm like, okay. So again, curiosity too. Why is it that you have these deeper thoughts? Be curious about why people say what they say and why they have the opinions they do. It's easier to do this exercise when the person's saying things that you kind of agree with. But when they disagree with you, that's an even better reason to do this. And the other one is listening to learn. So when somebody's talking, you listen to them like you want to learn. You have to suspend judgment. You have to suspend the need to respond. And because sometimes you're talking and in my head, I'm already thinking, what am I going to say after you? What am I going to say after you? It's like, no, just relax. Like listen and take in what I'm saying. And then give it a minute to respond. So I think those 3, if we can just, what does this mean to you? Whatever you tell me, what does this mean to you? Curiosity, posture. And when you listen to learn, if you add those 3, I think you can deepen these relationships and make them that much more powerful and that much more meaningful to your life.
Definitely 3 powerful tools. It's, I'm nerding out as I listen to you. It's clear the way you're talking. Again, someone who isn't trained in this stuff doesn't notice, but it's so clear. The words that you use are so deliberate. Like in that example you just used where you said, oh, they say, oh, my dad is sick or something like that. And then you said you nudged them a little, but it was via saying, yeah, when my parents are getting older, I know that was kind of that was really scary for me. Knowing that you could have just asked, hey, is that scary for you? Or hey, that must be super scary. But instead reflect it back as a belief of on yourself that is, again, less intrusive. You're not putting that really deep thing on them, and you're extending the olive branch to say like, it's easy to just agree at that point to go, yeah, totally. Here's how I'm feeling as well. So, when you talked about deepening the level of connection, it's not just diving straight in to these super deep, super intrusive questions. It's a dance. There's a lot of nuance. And again, we go back to why training and why a professional is so important, because
It's a
it's
dance.
something that can be very challenging. So for people listening, though, who just want to have deeper connections with their spouse, with their partner, with their kids, even, how do we know when is going too far? Like, where is the line that you draw where you're like, you don't want to go too deep when you're asking questions or when you're talking with someone? Like, is there a point where we should say, like, okay, like, let's not keep digging?
See, I'm a therapist. There's nothing too deep. Do we ever stop? I don't know. I think asking what the meaning is, if you're not imposing to them what the answer is, they'll tell you how far they want to go. So when you extend that olive branch and you say, you know what, I think that'd be scary to have your parent in the hospital. I wonder, thinking about their mortality, because all of our parents are aging now, and it becomes a thing for us. And if they're like, no, it's, you know what, it's fine. They're in the hospital. It's all good. It's clear they're not wanting to walk that bit with you, and that's okay. And I think that's what it is. It's also about reading the answer and their willingness to do it. Or on the other hand, some people are intrusive, and you just might say, if you feel yourself on the other side where somebody's asking a lot of these questions and you don't want to answer, just say, you know what, I don't like it. This is raw for me. I don't want to have this conversation right now. Or, you know what, it's fine. Like, this is what I'm willing to converse about right now. This is the level I want to go at right now. Right? I'm still working on this, right? So it really is about, it goes back to that very initial thing, which is you have to be truthful and authentic and say, I don't want to go there. And that's okay. We have to respect that some people don't want to go there because they don't want to, or they're not ready to. And that's okay.
What is the change that you want to see in the world?
Do you see this here in my wall? Like, I don't know if the listeners are seeing. I have a sticker in my wall, and it's in Portuguese, and it says, "Be the change you want to see in the world" by Gandhi. This is what that says. So when you ask me this, I'm like, oh my goodness. I believe, and I really have brainwashed myself to this, I believe that there is a wheel of good. And I believe we're all connected. The reason my book is called Connected is because I believe we're all connected. I believe in the power of paying it forward. I believe that when I save a kid, I'm saving my own kid. When I help a mother, just right before this podcast began, I got a text from a desperate mother. Something happened to her daughter, and it's like, I don't know what to do. I'm like, okay, I have a recording right now, but I'll call you right away. So I'm calling her next because we're all connected. That her suffering is my suffering. So this is my belief. And when you ask me, what change do I want to see in the world? I want people to believe in that and be good and be less defended. And don't worry about being taken advantage of. And don't worry about, oh, I do everything for everybody. Nobody does anything for me. Don't worry. It's a wheel of good. The math will all work out in the end. And if it doesn't work out, it's because we're not at the end yet. So just keep feeding this wheel of good and just keep adding to this. I have this math, this constant math in my head, and my husband makes fun of me about this all the time. It's my karma math. So I do good. 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 I'm like, okay, I'm good with my karma. Like I have positive investments. That means I've given more than I've taken. And then every once in a while, something so good will happen to me. And I'm like, dang it. So when something really good happens to me, I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm owing the universe so much now. And they're like, shoot, I got to like work and hustle to pay it back. So it's a fun way to keep tabs. It keeps me optimistic. And the change in the world that I'd love to see is for people to have this outlook that it is good. It is more good than bad, because sometimes it's hard to keep the faith.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I love the karma math because, like you said, it's like, oh, when something good happens, it's like, well, now I have to do so much good to balance it out. But it's also, that means that when something bad happens, it's like, oh, good. Now that means that a lot of good is coming because I'm
Yeah.
owed it. So I appreciate that a lot. The last question I have is if you could leave listeners with one action step that they could take right now today, as soon as they take their headphones out, as soon as this episode ends, to start making whatever change they're trying to make, whatever positive change they're trying to make in their life, just a little bit easier. What would it be?
Oh, Paul, I wish I could be like crazy inspirational, but we've got Gandhi with be the change you want to see in the world. So if there's one tangible thing, if you are good, if you do good, just everything kind of starts changing after that. I know I talk about this whole podcast has been about connection and relationships. So if there's one tangible thing, reach out to a connection, right? Call that uncle who's by himself, who's more isolated. Call that aunt call your parents. Give them the gift of the phone call. There you go. After you listen to this, please hang up and call a parent. And if you don't have a parent, call an uncle or an aunt or that cousin who's kind of more isolated. That's what we're going to do because that's the change we want to see in the world. So we're all connected and reaching out to the people who are maybe needing that phone call, needing that human connection, that human presence, that voice. How are you? You know what? I was listening to this and I thought of you, and you're such a, I don't know, great person and be part of my family or whatever it is.
Before you go, I want to talk to you. Literally. For the first time ever in over 12 years as a coach and 4 years doing this podcast, I'm opening up my schedule to help listeners like you for free. I'm offering a free coaching session to you as a thank you for supporting this show. I help people create their healthy habits and happy lives and create positive change around their health, wealth, and relationships. Whatever you're working on, mind, body, and soul, we can cover it all. If you're struggling, I want to help you build a plan to get through it and past it. So go into the show notes and click the link that says book a free call today. I don't know how long I'll be able to keep doing this, and my schedule will fill up. So if you want to take advantage, make it happen ASAP.